another episode of Women and Resistance. I'm your host, one of your hosts, Adesoji Gila, and with me, before she enters into character, is Aya Fubara Eneli Esquire. Good evening,
Good
sister.
evening. Good evening, everyone.
Okay, and today, like we've done previous weeks before, we're looking at the lives and times of Florence Griffith Joyner, otherwise known as Flo Jo. Without taking the thunder away from our sister, the first question would probably be, could you tell us who Flo Jo was?
I was so much more than what most people know me for. Certainly, my nails are legendary. And I loved jewelry and hair and makeup. And of course, the one leg unitard, that bodysuit, definitely legendary. And it's beautiful to see other people emulating what is now recognized as my iconic style. Um, But few people know that I was a poet. In fact, when I retired from track and field, one of my goals was to throw myself into becoming a writer at a level of excellence, similarly to what I did with track. And I was well aware that I couldn't pursue both with excellence, at least what I considered excellence. And I was very much looking forward to that next chapter of my life in so many different ways. And so, if you know that I'm a poet and my book is really hard to find, um, but maybe this will resurrect it. I wrote a book of poems and just life musings. I was the seventh of 11 children. My family is definitely one that would have been considered poor. My father was an electrician, and my mother was a seamstress. And I grew up in Los Angeles, in the Watts area. Um, there were definitely economic challenges, but we were so close knit as a family. And that love and that connection, and then just the dreams my parents had for us and the way they modeled for us who we should be. Um, Obviously, very impactful in my life. I was born Florence Dolores Griffith, and my nickname, which is something that a lot of people may not know, is actually Dee Dee. My whole family calls me Dee Dee. My nieces, my nephews, and of course, I have a lot of them, all call me Dee Dee. My father was Robert, and I'm named after my mother, who was Florence. Um, Sometimes when I towards the end of my life, I definitely spent a lot of time as a motivational speaker. I'm sorry if my medals are a
Medals
little
are getting on the.
distracting.
Well, carry
um
on.
um some people would meet me and they would, having seen me on TV, streaking across their screens, as it would be, would expect like a different kind of person when they meet me. And I would often hear people remark, well, but you're so kind of quiet and soft spoken. And some could say that had to do with the fact that as a child, I had a speech impediment.
Mm.
And children can be quite cruel when you are unusual. And so I was reserved. I was a little shy as a younger girl. I actually let other aspects of myself do the talking and not so much my voice. I started running. I mean, first and foremost, with my family, we just moved. We're all very athletic, and with my brothers, whatever they were playing, I was gonna play basketball. So football, they're running. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we used to love to do is to walk on our hands. So you do a handstand and then you walk on your hands. And we would do that all through the neighborhood. And the goal was to see like who
And stay on
yeah,
the
who could
longest.
stay on the longest. And it was always my goal to outdo everybody. Couldn't always, but I kept working on it. Um but I started running with the Sugar Ray Robinson Youth Foundation when I was just 7 years old. And it really speaks to the importance of giving back to your community because
Mm.
obviously Sugar Ray Robinson um, and his family had created this, and it was an opportunity for me. I got to go 1 day a week. I would love to see programs where youth were able to tap into whatever their gifts or their talents or hobbies were it more frequently, regardless of whether they were financially well to do or not.
Mm.
Um, but at a very young age, people recognized how fast I was. I had an older brother who would always beat me, and I could beat just about all my other siblings, and I would always try to get him to race me. Um, and when I was younger, he would actually run backwards while I was doing my best to run forward, and it was so frustrating. But it also taught me that my hair is kind of getting in the way. It also says people also used to be concerned, like, how does she run with this hair, and the wind and everything?
Mm.
But, it's just who I was, and it was part of my personality. And so it is what it is. But it just taught me that you never give up, right? You keep practicing. And so something that I would always say is believe, achieve, succeed. That was definitely a motto for me, and I would have it written all over my room. um to the extent that I had a room, we shared spaces, obviously. But as I got older, um believe, achieve, succeed. And that's a message that I definitely found powerful, and that I want young people, regardless of their circumstances, to focus on. So
Believe. You said believe.
believe, achieve, succeed. Thank you for asking me to repeat that. Um, so I attended Jordan High School, and I was always really interested in just being the best version of myself that I could be. And we didn't have a lot of financial resources, and so I ended up attending Cal State. Um, and I ran track. But then the track program was shut down when the school lost its funding, and I couldn't afford to stay in school without it. And so I dropped out of school. I needed to help out financially with my family, and I became a bank teller. I also worked as a customer representative. But you know what? No matter what I was doing, I had my signature style. In fact, when I was a student, it's so funny because now I see some of these fashion trends and I just chuckle to myself. Because when I was a student, I would, like elementary, middle school, I would wear different colored socks, like one on one leg and a totally different color on the other leg. And of course, people just looked at me like, oh my God, she's weird. I would always have my hair done, and I didn't follow convention. I just did what I liked. And again, people would always kind of, make comments and things of that nature. Um, but I didn't let that bother me. I had a strong sense of who I was.
Mhm.
And then, of course, by the time I got into um, high school and I was running, I mean, I actually started to convince my teammates to bedazzle themselves a little bit more, to explore their feminine side a little bit more. I think some can credit me with bringing a certain level of femininity.
Into the game,
to
to the
sports
sports.
and
Yeah.
definitely to track and field, that yes, we can be fast, and yes, it definitely is a sport and we're athletes, but that doesn't mean that we can't come with a fashion sense, we can't have our nails done or lipstick or our hair in different styles, like we could still express ourselves and do our work or do our job as athletes. I think I helped um change how women were supposed to be perceived, or what they needed to look like to be taken seriously
Seriously.
in
Okay.
that sport. I mean, and I hope that that's something that actually resonates in other careers that women have, that we don't have to become female versions of men. We can be
Mm.
ourselves. You can be authentically who you are. And so I did meet Bob Kersey. Some of you may know him
As a coach.
from yes, he's a coach, um, husband to Jackie Joyner Kersey, who ended up being my sister-in-law. And he recognized my talent, and he was actually crucial in getting me into UCLA. So that's where I transferred to, was University of California, Los Angeles. And that is really where my track career, you would say, just really took off. At UCLA, I won the NCAA championship in the 200 meters in 1982. I earned multiple All American honors. And of course, I contributed to UCLA's Pac 10 track victories.
Mm.
And it was an exhilarating time, but it was also a frustrating time. I think
Why
people
so?
see my accolades and they don't know the story behind it. So I was really horrible at getting out of the blocks. I could run, but I was so bad at getting out of the blocks. And if you know anything about particularly the shorter races,
The
the
sprints.
sprints,
Mhm.
you have to be able to explode out of the blocks. And that was just truly, pun intended, an Achilles heel for me. Um, and Bob Kersey just helped me work on that. There were many practices that ended up with me just being in tears, so frustrated, just wanting to give up. And there were times when I'm like, forget the block, I'm just going to run. But that leaves you so much more room to make up,
Yep.
you know. And with practice, with diligence, with dedication, just not focusing on how frustrated I was, I got to the point where, boy, was I fast out of the blocks. And that really made all the difference. The other thing about me is I understood the importance of being strong, of strength, right? Um, you look at any of my pictures, I mean, I'm retired now, so my muscles aren't quite bulging in the same way. But that was definitely, I know, something that attracted people, especially when I would wear my one-legged unitards.
That.
It was a very striking image. And I understood that because I wanted more for my life than just running track. So I was positioning myself, and I made those myself. Remember, I told you my mother was a seamstress, and
Okay.
I learned how to sew at a very young age. So I made all of my own uniforms myself, and then would put on whatever logo for whoever was sponsoring me at the time. But I you know overcame that frustration of the issue with the blocks. Bob Kersey's an amazing coach, and I understood the importance of strength. And so I spent quite a bit of time also weight training. I loved lifting weights. That was just truly my happy place. And
Mm.
it showed. Now, of course, I wasn't immune to some of the whispers about my body, or quote unquote that I came
Enhanced.
out overnight or whatever. But those are just from people who don't know me and have not taken the time to really understand what my trajectory was and just how disciplined I was and how hard I worked. I think there were some people who were also prone to want to um
Smear the
just
name.
yeah, well, marginalize me,
Mm.
because it's not possible for me to be everything that I was and to set the records that I did and yet to show up in the form that I did. Um, and you know, another thing that I always said to myself is, when people tell me I can't do something, you know how I respond?
Go
I
on.
just stop listening to them.
Mm.
I just stopped listening to them. I mean, I don't have to talk back to them. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. My focus was always on my level of excellence, going out there and running as fast as I could, regardless of what everybody else was doing. And so, I won silver in the Olympics, the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, which was really great because it was my hometown. And I won silver in the 200 meters. And once I got that taste, of what was possible, boy, did I ever train. And in 1988, at the Seoul um,
Olympics.
Olympics, I set, actually, I set the record that still stands. Oh my God, 1988 till now. What are we talking about? Um, 37 years that record
Correct.
is good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some people say it was wind aided. There were investigations later that said, yeah, maybe the wind, whatever, that
Well, it stood.
it
It
was,
still
yeah,
stood the
that
record.
it wasn't, working as well, whatever. But the record stands, and that was in the trials. And of course, I went on to win the 100-meter world record. I have the 100-meter world record, 10.49 seconds. But at the 1988 Olympics, I won the 100 meters, I won the 200 meters, and I also set a world record in that. And I also got gold in the 4 by 100 relay, and we earned a silver in the 4 by 400 relay. Um, and that, I think, was when I was just catapulted into the stratosphere, if you will. One of my favorite moments was seeing a montage of, the games at the end that was
Mm.
set to Whitney Houston's One Moment in Time. If you haven't seen that montage, I'm sure on your
Yep.
YouTube or something it exists.
Yep. Yep.
My goodness, it was amazing. I felt like I was literally floating on air. And that was a life-changing experience for me. It opened up so many doors. Um, of course, the endorsements and the advertisements were amazing. Right before then, in 1987, I had married the love of my life, Al Joyner, who is Jackie Jackie Joyner Kersey's
Kelsey's brother.
brother, and he was also an Olympic gold champion in the triple jump. Um, it was just a beautiful time to be alive. I did always deal with some other health issues that, again, we did not publicize. Very few people knew what was going on. Um, in addition to track and field, and of course, designing my own clothes, I actually was hired, or, yeah, they hired me to design the uniforms for the Indiana Pacers. And I believe had I not died, that would have just have been just like the beginning for me in terms of truly becoming a fashion mogul. Um, I also was an artist. Some people don't know that. And I was featured in an Olympian artist exhibit, and my artwork has been shown in different places as well. Um, I was very much concerned about youth and providing for youth opportunities that perhaps because of their financial situations they didn't have. And so I started my own foundation.
Mm,
And I was never too busy to go speak to a school, to spend time with some youth, to pour into them. And I was very much energized by them as well. And just letting them know, you have to chart your own course. You have to be who God has created you to be, regardless of whether people understand you and your vision for your life. So some of the companies that endorsed me, which was really big back then for a Black female athlete, Nike, Tide, Honda, Kellogg's, Coca Cola. At that time, I was the highest paid female track athlete, period. Um, and again, I think that that could have just gone a lot further. There are, of course, many books that have been written about me. Interestingly enough, and I'm not upset about it, most of these books are geared towards young girls, they're children's books.
yeah.
But of course, in anthologies about track and field and about women in sports, you will almost always find some information about me. But my book of poetry and other life musings is really difficult to come by. I was raised actually as a Seventh Day Adventist, and so we had very strict rules in terms of how we showed up and just respect for ourselves and respect for other people. And I hope that as people think about who I was and my legacy, that that always came across, just the excellence with which my parents raised us. Of course, I got to grace quite a few magazine covers,
Mm.
um, Sports Illustrated,
Yeah.
Time Magazine, Ebony, Jet, Essence, Vogue, and Women's Sports and Fitness. And again, that was just wonderful, particularly for my community, to see a Black woman and to see a Black woman who came from such modest means make it to what some would consider the pinnacle of the athletic world. Um, I also dabbled in acting. I had a couple of appearances on the sitcom called 227. Um, of course, Regina King was a child at the time who was also featured on 227.
Mm.
I also appeared on the new Hollywood Squares. And actually, um, at the time of my death, I was working on a screenplay for my life. We were in talks about producing a biopic of my life. But that was you know, cut short. Doesn't mean that it won't come around again. Um, I don't know. What else would you like to know
So,
about me?
question, yeah, quick
Yes.
question. Quick question would be, obviously you talked about the laurels you won in the course of your athletic and sprint career. In the course of doing that, I believe in, was it the 1984 Olympics? There was an event that happened when you were asked to cut your nails because apparently you might drop the baton. And even when you did, you subsequently didn't make the team because they said you waited too long. So the question would be, what was it like during that time for the bodies to police female bodies, as it were? I mean, we're talking about, obviously you earned your place getting there, but to now say you get there and you now have to conform to our rules after, I mean, that doesn't disturb your performance, but the question would,
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, my teammates knew that I could
Mhm.
pass the baton, I could get the baton, all of that. Um, I think you raise a bigger issue about the policing period of women's bodies. In the USA today, a country that I so proudly represented, um, knowing that my daughter, because I did have one daughter, Mary is just the love of my life, um, today has fewer rights as a woman to her body than
Mm.
I did at the time of my death. And that's just so crazy because we're supposed to be growing and evolving and doing better. And so to be going backwards in this way. So it was another frustrating part of my life. I mean, there were a lot of judgments about my look. There were a lot of judgments about my hair. Was I compromising, representing the country properly because my hair would be a distraction? And I think that you see that often with Black women because didn't they make a big deal about Venus and Serena
Yep.
and the beads in their hair?
Yep.
Like, come on. They're the ones playing the tennis. How is their hairstyle bothering you exactly? And so, of course, I did not want to cut my nails. At one point, my nails were 6 inches long. Oh, and it was a form of self expression. It was a part of me. It's like someone telling you to cut your hair. Oh, well, on that note, they are sometimes policing people's hair.
Mm.
Um, I recently heard about a young man who has locks and was wrestling, and he was told he had to cut his locks or forfeit his match, and he was on his way to, winning maybe the top medal. And it's like, what does the hair have to do? Like, does that give him some kind of advantage? So it was very frustrating. And yes, I battled with myself as to whether to do it or not. But ultimately, just kind of, hey, this is what I've trained for. This is the moment that I've trained for. The nails can grow back. I don't like it, but I will go ahead and cut the nails. And then just the audacity to then say, oh, wait a second. Okay, you cut it, but you didn't cut it in the time that we
And
thought you should. There's politics everywhere. And
mm-hmm.
I won't say anymore because I believe in just being positive and being light. Um, but I just wonder if there was more going on behind the scenes and really a concerted effort to
Mm.
ensure that I was not part of that squad at that time. But again, the best response is excellence. Anytime people question you or try to put you down. And so these kind of things would just cause me to train harder.
Mm. Mm.
And it wasn't, of course, the only time that my body was policed. I mean, I very much support drug testing in sports. I do not believe at all in doing drugs. That's crazy. Your body is all you have. And again, because I knew of my health issues, um, I would never do drugs. And so at the Seoul Olympic, they actually tested me 11 times.
Mm.
And each time I was clean. Now, some people have speculated that the reason I retired and did not continue in track and field was that by the next Olympics, there were more um, stringent kind of testing going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, these are just people who are determined to push a certain narrative. I had come and I had conquered. I had my baby in 1990 and I wanted to spend time with my child and I wanted to do other things, which I got to do, but not for very long
Mm.
because, as you are aware, um, I died in my sleep in 1998. Um, and so it's what it is. And for anybody dealing with these kind of issues at this time, just don't give up because there always will be detractors. There will always be people trying to rain on your parade. But if you are sure of who you are and confident in that, you can overcome. You can overcome it all.
So, um, you said at the beginning that you got your initial chance to show your skills with the Sugar Ray Robinson Foundation and subsequently the Jason Owens sports program. What would you say now to the government in the United States that it's seeking to take away those programs because they believe, I mean, these are their words, I'm paraphrasing now, that it advantaged a certain group over another group?
You know, I could go into the story of how my father became an electrician even back then and how difficult it was and the challenges he had to overcome.
Mm,
What what is clear to me when we look at the history of my people in this country is that we've always had to fight for whatever we want. Um, they don't see the advantages they give themselves. They don't see how they hold others back, or maybe they do and they don't care because that's precisely the point. And I think it baffles them that in spite of so many obstacles, we still find ways to rise above, to showcase who we are, to inspire, to change the world. And so I say to them, you this is a losing battle. Like you've done worse and we still found a way. And to my community, I say, um, don't ever stop believing in the youth. Don't ever stop pouring into the youth. And if the government doesn't want to, that's fine. We can choose to take care of our own. We should always take care of our own, just like my parents somehow, raised 11 children on their meager salary. And my mother taking in work as a seamstress. And so it's unfortunate because there's so much that a young person can learn from sports.
mm,
Just the
the
discipline,
discipline.
the mental resilience, because my husband and I always approach the sport from a total a holistic perspective. It was body, but it was also your mind, it was also your spirit. And so you'd often see me, if you watch videos of my races, or you even just see some of the still shots, you will see me praying. I was a very prayerful woman. And but we believed you have to come into sport with your mind right. You had to have that mental toughness. You also obviously had to have the discipline to build your body, and then just having that spiritual part of it. And so looking at what they're doing in the arena of athletics and sports, I would just say that we have to be the ones who create what we want for our young people. We don't need to wait on anybody else. And understanding that sports is one way that young people can develop their minds,
Mm,
strengthen their ability, that their resilience, if you will, um, keep their bodies healthy and strong, you know, because we know how diseases could just kind of run rampant through, poorer communities. And to the extent that some of us were able to use athletics as a
means of escape.
springboard
Mm,
for, yes, I, definitely track and field was a means
economic
of me
escape. Yeah.
escaping
Yeah.
um, the ghetto. That is absolutely true. And once I got out, I just wanted to find a way to help as many other people get out. And I also wanted to make sure I didn't go back in. So my daughter had very different experiences than what I had.
mm,
Um, and that's why I pursued, all my passions. I just was really focused on life beyond even track and field, as excellent as it was and as much as I enjoyed it.
mm. We've seen in recent times, Shakari Richardson experienced the same thing in terms of policing her actions, both on and off the track. So the question would be, she seems to take borrow a leaf from you because she's very stylish. So the question would be, can style be a legitimate tool of protest and self-determination for black women in historical white spaces?
Oh, it always has been. I mean, just look at what we do with our hair. I mean, we can we can come in 30 days and have a totally different look all 30 days. We're the only ones who can do it. And well, pull it off with the class that we do.
Mm,
Um, and so, yeah, absolutely. And we've been resisting with that for a long time. I mean, if you even if you go as far back as, laws that were set in place for Black women to make sure their hair was tied up, you know, but then you go on the continent and you see what my sisters are doing with their head ties and their gillies. That too becomes a work of art. Everything we do is so infused with spirit that it becomes a marvel. It
mm,
sets the I mean, we are literally the ones who dictate what is cool and stylish across the world. And so, yes, for Black women, um, absolutely how we show up can be a form of protest. It can be a form of asserting who we are. It can be a form of taking space, you know, not just fading into the what would they say, the wallpaper. Just like, yes, I'm here, I'm bold, I'm beautiful, I'm colorful, and guess what? I'd still kick your butt on this field.
mm,
And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, um, there's a word I want to use, but my mother would cringe. So I would refrain from it. But how amazing is that? But
mm,
if you were wondering what the word is, it starts, well, it's like two parts to the word. And the first part of the word starts with B, and the second part of the word starts with A. We are just like amazing. Call us unicorns, if you will. And I definitely encourage my sisters to continue to express themselves. Can you imagine if I was still alive today? There's no question I would have had a whole nail collection, hair collection, definitely the fashion piece. Um, Definitely my poetry, because I've been determined to really become a great writer. Um, and so, my message to my sisters is don't ever compromise who, I mean, like, I understand, you're going for a job interview, that kind of thing. That might not be the time for your full self-expression. So, use wisdom. But I would also very much tell um my fellow sisters to embrace who they are and to explore who they are. Because I think, again, sometimes society can put so many restrictions on us that
mm,
we lose our sense of self. And if you lose your sense of who you are of no use to anyone else.
mm, mm. Okay.
I did
You,
I did want to share. I know you have some more questions for me, and I promise I will answer them. But I wanted to share just some of my quotes. If there
yeah,
are young
please do.
people watching, maybe this is something that could inspire them. Conventional is not for me. I like things that are uniquely flow. I like being different. And I see so many young people now dealing with mental health um, challenges because they are different and they're
Seeking
not
to conform.
accepted.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And of course, like with the question you asked, the example you gave of them trying to insist that I cut my nails and all of that. It's like the world always wants us to just be like these robots, these cookie cutter things that they can control.
Mm,
Um, but I embraced being different from a young age. Yeah, I didn't speak too much. I'm still soft spoken, but I let other aspects of myself really speak up for me. And I'm loud in that way, right? So there's no way, I don't care how many competitors there were on the field, you were going to notice Flo Jo. It's just what it was. Um, Something else that I would like to share is um, I always said this: I don't do drugs. I've never taken any drugs, and I don't believe in them. And so, for people who would still try to malign my legacy and say, oh my God, how could she go that fast? Listen, records are made to be broken.
broken. Yeah.
For centuries, it seems, no one could break a 4 minute mile. But once it was broken, like in quick succession, so many other people were able to run under 4 minute, under a 4 minute mile. And so don't malign me because I set this record. Do the work to break the record.
Yeah.
But, you know, whoever else comes, whatever other record, um, to have a record that has stood the test of time in
Time.
this way
Hmm.
is something that I'm very proud of. And I have to tell you, my entire family is really proud of. In fact, there's a documentary my daughter made, Mary, made about me. And in it, they interview some of my nieces and nephews and my uncles and aunts. And they each started to recount when they heard that I had broken the record. Because, it's not like we had the money to fly everybody out or whatever. So
Mm.
they were watching, and my brother was actually a bus driver. He was driving the bus and had the little radio right next to him to hear the results. And he tells the story that when he heard that I had broken the world record, he pulled his bus over. He just had to hear it again. I'm so glad he didn't get fired, but that's how close we were and how supportive my family was of me. In fact, after my death, Al, my husband, had such a hard time. We were truly, truly, truly close. And my mother ended up raising my daughter, Mary. That's just how close we were. Um, but let me read a little bit more to you here, and then I will take your question. To do justice to a lifelong dream of being a writer, these were remarks I made upon my retirement. To do justice to a lifelong dream of being a writer, I must give it the intense concentration and focus I gave to track. To
Mm.
do both with excellence is not possible. It is with a sense of sadness and joyous anticipation that I leave track and move on.
Mm. I believe that quote comes from your mom, who said, when you get impeded by anything, just move on.
Yes, yes. And so, I was fortunate enough to serve on the President's Council, um, to speak to youth all across the country and even outside of the country. I even had a Barbie doll that was made in my image, which again was also kind of path breaking back then, especially when there were so few dolls that
Represented your.
represented
Mm.
black people. Um, of course, there's a documentary out on me called um, Flo Jo, which was such a creative title, but it was on the ESPN Olympiad channel, so you might still be able to find that. And Mary, like I said, also created a tribute documentary celebrating my mother's life. Well, celebrating her mother's life, So I used to have seizures quite a bit. Some say it was due to epilepsy. Again, this was something we kept under wraps. And on September 21st, 1998, um, one of the things Mary and I used to love to do was watch movies. And that the night leading up to the morning when I passed away, we had stayed up just watching movies. We watched three different movies back to back. And Mary was in the bed with me. And there was a prayer that I taught her to pray every night before she would go to sleep.
Mm.
And so we prayed this prayer together. Um, and one part of the prayer says, "And if I die before I wake, I pray thee,
Pray the
Lord, my
Lord my
soul to
soul to take.
take."
Yeah.
I really wish it hadn't happened this way. But I mean, in the sense of my daughter being right next to me when I died, um, she was in the bed with me, but I have no regrets about the time that I spent my last hours with her, making memories with her, laughing, having fun. Well, that morning, Mary was still sleeping next to me, and Al came to wake me up, and I guess he turned me over, and my eyes just kind of were just like rolled back, he said. And according to Mary, he let out a scream that she would never forget. And Mary, only 7 years old, said in that moment, she just knew, even without totally understanding what it meant, but she knew her mother was gone. She knew I was gone. And that scream from Al still haunts her till today. She's found peace. Oh, she's an amazing woman. You need to check her out. She teaches gymnastics and she writes and she's a dancer and she's a mom. And to my mother, I would just want to thank you for raising my daughter and loving her the way that you did. Um, but at any rate, I had so much life that I wanted to live, so much that I wanted to do. But it was obviously not meant to be. But I am gratified that my legacy still lives on in my daughter and also in the records and just the footage that exists out there about what this little girl from Watts was able to accomplish.
Mm. So, the question I wanted to pose earlier was what does the suspicion around your records reveal about race and the greater sporting society?
It's always something, isn't it? Now, again, I am totally against drugs and doping and all of that, but there's just really something about Black people and our excellence that just irks those who feel that we should stay
Particular lane?
yeah, and stay in the background. And obviously, in sports like track and field, where especially when you talk about the sprints, Black people are definitely dominating. And of course, they have all these um, it's so funny, right? The research about, well, because our muscles are this way, we're better at the short races. But then again, when it comes to the long races, that many of our Kenyan brothers and brothers from East Africa and sisters are winning, then it's like, well, it's because of so and so. It's like, okay, like human beings are different. We have different environments that we grow up in, and don't be so threatened by us. Do what you're good at, and let's do what we're good at. But
Mm.
what you see is that we're good at everything, and the only thing that has kept us from shining in most arenas is the fact that there has been this discrimination, this very vigorous attempt to keep us out. Look at the National Basketball Association, and you go back 60, 70 years and all the stars are white men, and I guess at that point you could say white men can jump. and,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved all people. um, but then you get some black men who get into the league, and then it starts to change, and people aren't quite sure how to respond except to say that we have some undue advantage. And again, I would tell people, don't waste too much of your energy on things of that nature.
Mm.
Like, just focus on you, focus on what you came to do. And beyond the realm of track and field and athleticism, it was very important to me to help to spread the word about the importance of just taking care of your body. In fact, I would, we all have muscles, whether we can see them or not. But I would often tell people that, a muscle is like a car.
Yeah.
And if you just get into your car, it's been a little cold, it's been sitting for a while, you don't let it idle and warm up a little bit before you just take off, you're going to, eventually create some issues for you and that car.
Mm.
And so I always tell people a muscle is like a car. If you want it to run well, early in the morning, you have to warm it up. And so for people like, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, I need a trainer. No, no, you don't. You just need the will. You can get up and stretch. You can walk to the corner store instead of driving. You can take the stairs instead of the elevator.
Yes.
I think it's actually cheaper to go and buy some vegetables than it is to take a family out to a fast food restaurant. But we have to be willing to make some of these health changes. Now, upon my death, there were some, understandably so, some tension between my mother, maybe, and my husband Al. I was somewhat fatigued towards the end. I didn't realize that that would be the end. In fact, I remember speaking at an event in Columbus, Ohio, and people were so generous, and just so many people wanted to meet me. And I think my flight had been delayed, like we got in late, and
Mm.
I barely got dressed and got there, had on a simple black dress, and I gave my remarks. But I'm telling you, everything in me wanted to just go and lay down. But here are these people who had bought tickets to come and see me, and they were now lined up and just, just wanting to have
Wanting
that
to have a, yeah,
interaction.
yeah.
And my husband was trying to get me to
Mm.
wind down because he knew the toll it was taking on me. But I stayed. I stayed till that last person in line. And my mother felt that perhaps Al didn't protect me enough, knowing um, the health challenges I had. But I was always a woman who spoke up for and advocated for myself. And so I haven't been a mother, understand a mother's pain and grief. But yeah, I that was not where I wanted to see my family. And
Mm.
at some point, even Mary was, had a little bit of a distant relationship with her father. But I was glad to see that they were able to
Mm.
get on the path of healing. But it's so important that we take care of our health. And then, yes, certainly if you have someone in your family who has some particular health concerns, that you are doing your part to help support them. Another quote that I would always share with kids and that I would definitely want to share with your listeners is, I believe in the impossible because no one else does. And so, with everything, the challenges that are coming with education and sports and the arts, I was also very interested in the arts. It's time for us to do the impossible
Mm.
like we've done before. Like, I just never let other people and their schemes um, take me off course. And that's what I would say at this time. Um, there's so much I want to share. Like I shared with you earlier, I always overworked in the weight room. I loved working with weights. I knew that my strength would give me an edge. So, again, for those athletes, whatever your sport may be, you want to get strong. That's going to really help to differentiate you from from the rest of the field, and that's what you want.
Mm. Yes, and with that edge, we've
Well, can I just share some, especially since my medals keep jingling? Can I just share some of my honors? And of
gone
course, there are too many for me to list. I've already talked about the Olympic successes, but I was
1049
also inducted into the USA Track and Field Hall of
Hall of
Fame
Fame.
in 1995. I was also inducted into the International Women's Sports Hall of Fame and the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2023. I don't know what took them so long, but that's okay. There is a park that's named after me, and I also have an elementary school that is named after me as well. Um, and the one that really tickles me is there are quite a few artists that have kind of given me shout outs in their music. So J. Cole is one of them. Mick Jenkins is another one. And my daughter, Mary, is an artist. She's a singer. And she's also, in fact, that documentary she made for me about me at the end includes her singing an original song that she wrote for me.
Mm.
So, all in all, oh, when I think about how I would like to be remembered, I would like to be remembered in the words of my daughter as an angel on earth. My life is not just about what I did on the field. My life is about who I was and the way I related to people. And, all my nieces and nephews know how much I love them and would check in with them. It was just my desire to bring light, to share love with all people, and to have fun, obviously, living my life.
Mm.
And that's what I strove to do. I think that's what I succeeded at doing, notwithstanding my early demise. My biggest regret is I did not get to raise my daughter, that we only had a short 7 years
70.
together. Um, but one of the things that I did, hmm, call it premonition, I wrote letters to my daughter
Mm.
that she was not to get or to read till she got to a certain age. And when she got to that age, her father gave her the letters. And it was actually part of, it was a big part of their healing, their being able to come back together, is because, her father, Al, remarried. And I think, as any little girl would, that was perturbing
Very,
to
yeah.
her, yes.
Mm-hmm.
had always told Al that when I died, because I mean, I knew I had an illness. I didn't expect to die the way I did. The autopsy said I actually suffocated during an
Sleep.
epileptic
Yeah.
seizure. But and they tested me, and there were no drugs in my system. So you guys stop with all the stories. Um, but I'd always told Al, I loved him so much that I did not want him, to spend the rest of his life just mourning me. And so I'd always told Al when I die that I want him to remarry. I want him to live his life with joy and with no guilt. And that it just took a while for Mary to come to terms with any woman being with her father other than me. Yeah.
That's very touching. Very touching.
So all in all, I was this angel on earth. I was a record breaking athlete. I was a fashion designer. I was an artist in terms of, paintings and the such. And I was a mother. I was a daughter. I was an aunt. And I was a philanthropist. And I hope that my legacy will continue to be one that inspires little girls who look like me, all people across the globe, um, because we all deserve to be our best. And the
Mm.
world actually benefits from us being our best.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, and I'm afraid to say that we've come to the end of another episode of Women and Resistance.
I was going to put my hoodie up for you guys, but oh my God, I have so much of my hair down now. So I just wouldn't do that. But these are really cute. And now they're like the rage, the cut off sleeves with the hoodie. I mean, these are all looks that I created.
Mm.
So anytime you see it or you're rocking one of them, just
Just
kind of know
remember.
that's part of Flo Jo's legacy.
Yeah. So next week we are going to be looking at Amy Ashwood Garvey, and yeah, people might remember she was married to Marcus Garvey, and yeah. And before you ask the question, yeah, which of the which of the Amy's are we talking about? Yeah, we're going to be talking about Amy Ashwood Garvey next week, and the week after that we'll be doing Amy Jacques Garvey. So it will be Amy's back to back. So next week is going to be the turn
I
of
guess
Amy.
Mr. Garvey was busy.
He likes his Amy's.
He likes his Amy's.
So next week we're going to be talking about Amy Ashford Garvey, and the week thereafter it will be the turn of Amy Jack Garvey. I would like to thank Sister Flo Jo for coming through, and
For having me.
any last words before you do leave us?
Just live, take up space, be
Mm,
who you were created to be. And you know what? The world will eventually come around.
mm, mm. And yes, and with that powerful message, again, she did tell us earlier that we are supposed to believe, achieve, and succeed. So, believe, achieve, and succeed. And on that note, it is a good night from me. And until next week, have a lovely week ahead. Good night.